Time has been really weird this last year with the palindrome that we're going through, so it wouldn't be completely surprising if you didn't notice that Valentine's Day is coming up. I have a bit of a soft spot in my heart for Valentine's Day. I'm very aware of how corporate it is and how silly it is, but it's always been kind of a going out with my girlfriends kind of weekend. Obviously that's not possible this year, but I was thinking about love goddesses. I talked a bit on this channel before about Aphrodite and why I think that she's a really common beginner goddess when you enter into like a pagan path or a pagan world, or if you're a witch when you decide to take on a relationship with a goddess. It's just really popular for people to feel drawn to figures like Aphrodite or Freya or other love type goddesses for that first initial connection. To be completely blunt with you, I think that this is actually really critical and important. I think that everybody should have some sort of love goddess figure in their pantheon at some point. I think it's a sorely needed area for most people to grow in. But when we talk about love, we're actually using a really fluid sort of concept. In the English language, there's just one word for this: love. There are many terms we use to describe things like affection or fondness for, but with the term love, we assign all manner of emotion and desire and commitment. We can love our parents and love our pets. We can love our lovers and love pizza. We can love sunsets more than sunrises, and we can love the color blue. The weight of this word is often found and judged by the context of the thing that we're talking about, right? We understand that the weight of loving one's partner is very different from the weight of loving a certain genre of music or a certain restaurant. When we talk about love goddesses in the pagan community, what are we really describing? By calling them love goddesses, what are we saying about them, their traits and their qualities? And what are we saying about their power? What are we saying about the type of influence that they can have in our lives by worshiping them or working with them in some way? Are there certain actions or magics that we are equating with that being? I think in some cases the answer is pretty obvious, right? There are love goddesses who are so sensual that we understand the word love to mean in their context something romantic and physical and sensory. But there are other goddesses too who are called love goddesses who embody none of those things and are in fact much colder or rigid or even justice oriented. My neighbor has like a Harley Davidson collection, so sometimes he just sits in the driveway and just plays with the engine. So if you hear anything in the background, I apologize. To these more regal kind of goddesses, you might assume a more structured form of love, one that's more motherly or strict. These are the kinds of love that might come with some sort of commitment or contract, like a marriage. So with Valentine's Day approaching, I wanted to talk about a few different types of love goddesses that I've personally observed and I think that can be sort of categorized. Many of these goddesses I'm going to mention today fall into multiple categories, so I'm not trying to say that these are strict boundaries or that they are boundaries at all. If anything, I'm hoping to just offer another way to understand the concept of a love goddess, and maybe in your practice identify what type of love goddess you might be needing, or what type of love goddess would be most beneficial to you and the kind of love that you are exercising in your life. I should also mention that this list is definitely not exhaustive. I am not an expert on every pantheon, so of course I'm not going to include ones that I don't feel at least semi-comfortable asserting as some falling into this category. I have made a more in-depth video on Aphrodite if you want to watch that, and I do plan to make more in-depth videos on other goddesses who are love goddesses. In particular, Isis and Freya are high on my list. As we approach Valentine's Day, I will probably actually be making those sooner rather than later because it's on my mind. So if that's interesting to you, the more in-depth, keep an eye out for that. Final disclaimer here is this list, while not exhaustive, is as inclusive as I felt confident in being, meaning I do include goddesses here that are part of pantheons or religious traditions or pagan traditions that might not be suited to you personally. As always, please be very considerate of the culture in which a goddess or a god is found in, and do some self-reflection on whether or not it is appropriate for you to be accessing that culture, and if you are, how you are doing that. So without further ado, these are 8 categories of love goddesses that I sort of observe personally and would like to just talk about. These are goddesses who attract love, goddesses who rule romantic love, goddesses who rule love from parents or within families, goddesses who wield emotional love, goddesses who work in more physical love, goddesses who heal broken hearts, goddesses who aid in self-love, and then finally goddesses of unconditional love. I'll try to make this speedy. All right, let's start with goddesses who attract love. We'll keep it in the Valentine spirit. So on the surface, this might sound like goddesses who attract romantic love or romantic interest or romantic partner, but I think it goes a little deeper than that. If you are desiring in your life to attract love, either through witchcraft or through a goddess relationship or just through, creating a Tinder profile, there's an implication there that there is something absent. There's a space in your life that you want to have occupied by another person, someone that you can be vulnerable with, emotional with, perhaps sensual with. By wanting to attract love, there's an implication that there is definitely an absence of tenderness being received or an absence of someone to give tenderness to. I think goddesses in this area can help us not just with attracting lovers, but attracting love from different types of relationships, whether that be fostering deeper friendships or restoring a loving and tender relationship with a family member. In some cases, I think that these goddesses can also bring love into our lives in more unexpected ways, like through a pet, like a new dog, or through a new community organization we might start working with and find purpose in. Or you could think of these as goddesses who can bring love into your life in more gentle ways, like kindness from strangers. Many of these goddesses are also associated with things like springtime. There's a sense of new and awe and wonder and joy at having this new beautiful thing, this new beautiful rose you want to protect. The best examples for this are Anya, Freya, or Easter. But Ben 10, Saraswati, Hathor, Psyche, Oshun, Yemaya, Venus, Aphrodite, and Frigg also have a lot of influence in this area too. If you are very serious about looking for romantic love specifically, there are many goddesses who rule this. I think it's important to keep in mind that in many of the cultures and pantheons that these goddesses emerge out of, romantic love was sort of a side story to one's marriage or family commitments. In the ancient world, people often married for things like duty or success or for their family ties and contracts. As a result, romantic love wasn't always associated with things like partnership and marriage. And this isn't just exclusive to the ancient world, but if you're a pagan, it's very common to encounter this sort of thinking. In the modern world too, there are cultures where love for duty or love for economic benefit makes more sense than love for romance. You can still love someone that you're in an arranged marriage with. You can still love someone that your parents might have set you up with. You can fall in and out of love with a spouse over time. And in some cultures, it's kind of accepted to have people on the side of that relationship that you do express romantic love with. However, the opposite is also true in different cultures in the ancient world where romance was the prized possession to have. For the Hebrew Canaanites, one critical thing was that if a man could not satisfy his wife sexually and emotionally and wasn't providing that romantic love for her, she could use that as grounds for divorce. So wherever you are in your life, whether you are a monogamous person like myself, if you're more polyamorous, whether you are in a committed relationship or looking for one or looking for something that's more of a fling or some fire, there are many different goddesses that you can explore the boundaries of love, romance, and commitment with, and they all will have a different flavor. I say all this because if you are used to working within one pantheon, but the love romance goddess of that pantheon doesn't really click with your version of romance or love in your life right now or in your culture or in your context, it's okay to kind of maybe branch out a little. So some prime examples are Radha, Juno, Freya, Anat, Isis, Ishtar, Yemaya, Oshun. They are all very rich in this area of romantic love and commitments. Okay, so the third one I want to talk about is like goddesses of familial love or parental love. Two of my favorite stories that demonstrate this are the stories of Demeter and the story of Isis. In their myths, both of these goddesses, both of these women, displayed their boundless commitment to their children, their passionate commitment not just to the well-being of their children, but the legacy of their children, I think is a great example of how we tend to think about what we leave behind. So assuming you watching this are already a pagan or you're thinking about becoming a pagan, there's a pretty good chance that you have experienced or will experience some turbulence with your family. So many of us who are pagan have abandoned the religion of our upbringing, or many of us who are pagan have a sexual or gender identity that might go against the norm. Either way, if you are pagan, there's likely something in you, something about you in your life that you might experience prejudice from your own family members. Working with a goddess like Isis has for me been really healing in how I think about mothers and motherhood. There was a lot of bad blood between me and my mom, a lot of just broken cords, a lot of icky feelings where, you know, the mother of my childhood and the mother of my womanhood just felt like two different women. So for a long time when I was working with Isis, I approached her as more of like a big sister sort of figure. and it was really hard for me to see her as a mother goddess, as a queen mother. I just had too many connotations around mothers being people who might betray you, or at least, betray your trust. But as I allowed myself to be more vulnerable in my relationship with her, I found a lot of healing. And it actually also helped my relationship with my mother, my physical, real life mother, who now I can feel like maybe she doesn't necessarily agree with who I am or prize it, but she does respect it. And I found ways to command that respect by learning to speak her language a little. I'm not saying my relationship with mom is fixed, it's not, but the ways in which I can handle it, the ways in which I approach it, the ways in which I emotionally and mentally process it are significantly improved because of my relationship with Isis as a queen mother, as a mother goddess, as a parental love goddess. Now that I'm pregnant and about to be the mother to my own child, this is a huge area for me where I'm thinking a lot about different mother goddesses. I'm rereading myths and stories from all manner of pantheons and trying to find the lessons I need in order to be a successful mom myself. If parental or family love is something that you are struggling with or thirsty for or looking to exercise yourself, I really recommend goddesses like Demeter, Ceres, Frigg, Tiamat, Parvati, Shekinah, and as I mentioned, Isis. He's just relentless. He's awake from his nap and relentless. So the next category I want to talk about is goddesses of emotional love. So when I say emotional love, what I mean is like, how do you personally express love? How do you experience it? Your answer to this question is going to probably be very different from mine, very different from your partner's answer, very different from anyone that you know. People have love languages, and we all have our own little bit of a flavor on that language, our own dialect. If you are someone who has a hard time expressing love to people that you do love in ways that they can understand it, this might be a good area for you. If you're someone who feels a little bit afraid or locked up about expressing love, this might be good for you. Or if you just want to expand how you approach expressing love in general and have new ideas and new methods to express emotional love to people in your life or to the world at large, these are goddesses for you. So when I think of goddesses who wield emotional love as a power source, or they can teach different ways to express emotional love, I think of goddesses who are very large and perhaps dominating in their pantheons. These are goddesses that kind of emanate that puree mentality, right? And every story about them has some sort of demonstration of them expressing love in a new way. Isis comes to mind again, of course, because I work with her a lot and really closely, and I see her as a very versatile love goddess, but there are many others. Others who embody this pure essence of love include the Sophia, Venus, Inanna, Bronwen, Kuan Yin, Lakshmi, Oba, and Urzili. So all of their folklore, all of their mythologies and stories really demonstrate how they put love into action and love into expression. They emanate love, and it can be a really fun exploration, I think, to take of, okay, well, where in my life am I maybe not expressing something, and where can I find my own fountain and pour forth that emotion? The next category I want to talk about is physical love, which is often thought of, I think, as kind of like an opposite to emotional love, but I think that they feed into each other quite a bit. The reason for this is that emotion is something that usually manifests in the physical world, right? As acts of service or kindness. Our love becomes physical when we put it into words or gifts or any sort of favor for someone. And physical love is interesting because it kind of incorporates a little bit of physical attraction as well, right? Physical attraction to a person, it's far more than sensual. It's not just a sexual desire. It's what causes us to want to be around that person more, to observe things about them, small little habits they might have. We have a desire to drink in their personality and their style. We have a desire to really understand their auric field. If my camera is doing weird things, which I'm sure it is, it's because my cat is going back and forth on my feet and I'm giving him lots of pets and cuddles. Goddesses of physical love are the ones that help us make that first move. They encourage us to send that first message on Tinder. They encourage us to maybe reach out and brush an arm. Goddesses of physical love are the ones that make our heart flutter when we receive a passed note in the first grade from a crush. But goddesses of physical love can also help us with making safer choices. Let's say you're on a date with somebody that you matched with on Tinder, you're back at their apartment, you're about to hook up, and there might be this moment where you feel a sort of sense of clarity on, does this person actually make me feel good? Goddesses of physical love can help us determine whether or not somebody is going to zap our energy or feed our energy. They also might help us pick out lingerie or the right perfume. They might help us prepare a great meal. They might help us get more creative in the bedroom. They might help us just feel more empowered in our own physical bodies. Aphrodite is perhaps one of the more famous love goddesses in this way, physical love goddesses, but she's certainly not the only one. Bast is another great example of a goddess who is not just associated with physical love, but also very heavily with war. She originally was a war goddess who over time was identified with things like lust and seduction. In addition to Aphrodite and Bast, other goddesses include Anat, Freya, Lilith, Kali Ma, Shakti, Astarte, Ereshkigal, Hathor, Inanna, Katesh, Kapala, Oshun, and Isis. All of them have influence in this realm of experience. You'll notice, I hope, that not just Bast, but some of the other goddesses on this list are also associated with things like war or the underworld or a dark moon. This is definitely not a coincidence and probably one of my favorite areas to explore as far as physical love goddesses go. Alright, so the sixth area I want to talk about are goddesses of the brokenhearted. Growing through a breakup is hard, getting rejected from a longtime crush is hard, getting shut down from any sort of proposal is hard. Breaking up with partners can be devastating, breaking up with longtime friends even more so. Being strung along by a friend with benefits can be traumatizing. When one's heart broken is not just some random unfortunate experience. It is kind of part of the package of life. Many of us experience our first real heartbreak around our puberty age, around our teen years, and it feels like the world is caving in on itself. When you're young, it feels like you'll never survive heartbreak. And as you grow older, it doesn't really get easier, but it gets a lot easier to get through. But at the same time, as you age, the stakes around heartbreak increase. What we lose in connection with those relationships, whether they be friend circles or a home, that aches too. And yeah, the knives never get duller, but we do learn ways to be more resilient to them. The people of the ancient world felt this heartbreak too. Disease, famine, and war took lovers and loved ones sooner than they needed to be gone. Rejection and betrayal occurred just like it does now. Even the modern difficulty of catching feelings for a friend with benefits has a mirror in the ancient world with mistresses and concubines or secret affairs. It sucks to be a side chick, and it's not a new phenomenon. So heartbreak has always been part of the human experience. So there are goddesses for that. My favorite goddess by far when it comes to dealing with heartbreak would be the Morrigan. Now, I don't have a very strong connection with the Morrigan. I haven't worked with her, but I'm very familiar with her story because I relied on it a lot when I was going through a particularly difficult heartbreak of my own. Occasionally she's seen as one goddess, and at other times she's more of a trifecta, but her own experience of heartbreak and the devastation that followed I found deeply healing. If a dark gothic aesthetic is something that you just need to drink in when you're going through heartache, the Morrigan is where it's at. If that doesn't really work for you, Hestia is a very good alternative of somebody who kind of embodies more of that warm fire, a cup of tea and honey, that sort of tenderness that might heal. Hestia is somebody who can make staying in bed all day crying a lot less lonely. Other goddesses for the healing of a broken heart include Oba, Kuan Yin, Ereshkigal, Devi, Venus, and Shakti. I've also heard very positive things about Red Tara and Yaji, but I can't totally speak to those myself. So the next one is goddesses of self-love. So self-love is a challenge. It is difficult to sort of find the boundary between self-love and ego, or self-love and narcissism at times. Also a challenge to maintain self-love in the ups and downs of life and the ups and downs of our hormone cycle. It's a challenge to learn what self-love even looks like for you. For example, Instagram is full of things about like taking baths and drinking water and going for walks and stuff like that. And I do those things anyway, so when I'm not really feeling very self-lovey, that's already part of my routine. It doesn't really make a difference. I know what my self-love actions are, and they aren't those. My self-love actions are usually putting a whole day aside to clean the house or taking an afternoon to just draw. And different people are gonna struggle with different areas of self-esteem, right? Like not all of us have difficulty with having love for our own intellect or love for our own creativity. Not everybody feels difficulty when it comes to loving their own bodies. Some of us might be more self-conscious that maybe we come across as uninteresting or uncharismatic. Maybe we deeply worry about if we're enough for the world or enough for our employer. Maybe we worry that we're going to lose the love of a particular partner or family member if we mess up. Where people struggle with self-love looks different for everyone. And goddesses of self-love are not just about fostering sort of that independent review of the self, but about taking steps to conquer those fears, to conquer those insecurities that make sense for every unique individual. Goddesses of self-love help us manifest new routines, new habits, new patterns of thinking. They encourage a lifelong relationship building with the self. Medusa, though not technically a goddess, is a really good example of a figure who struggles with being othered as a result of her condition. Other goddesses to consider include Baba Yaga, Artemis, Psyche, the Green Tara, Rhiannon, Kupala, Venus, Amenu Uzume, the Kaliak, Ereshkigal, and Isis. Alright, so the last category I want to talk about are goddesses of unconditional love. And on the surface, this might seem very similar to goddesses of emotional love, where things are about expression, but this goes a bit deeper and has more breadth than the emotional love piece. So for me, goddesses of unconditional love don't just come with emotional expression, but they come with these ideas of forgiveness, of mercy. They embody emotional love alongside just pure kindness, but also justice. Sometimes we employ unconditional love when we forgive someone who has hurt us, or sometimes we ache for unconditional love when we know that we need to be forgiven. Unconditional love means not holding someone's mistakes or shortcomings against them, but trying to help them along their path to shine, to improve, and to grow. Much like an elementary school teacher, unconditional love recognizes where one's flaws are, recognizes where progress needs to be made, and tries to create opportunities for that to happen. The goddesses of unconditional love are often about others as much as it is about ourselves. It's about expressing that sort of gratitude for being given space to grow and improve, and returning the favor to others. Goddesses who really embody this include the Sophia, Kuan Yin, Shekinah, Kali Ma, Ereshkigal, Andraste, and Asherah. So those are the 8 categories that I sort of place love goddesses in my own head. I hope they make sense to you in some way. And again, this list was not exhaustive. I don't claim to understand every single goddess who embodies love in the same way that I can't say I myself understand every emanation of love. But if you are looking for a love goddess and you're finding that not a lot of them are really clicking that you're looking into, this might be a good way to approach it. Be like, okay, well, what kind of love do I need? What kind of stories do I want to read about? What sort of energy am I looking for? And breaking things down into these kinds of subjects, these sort of headings of love, might help. I would love to hear your experiences below. If there are any goddesses you would add to any of these categories or maybe take out. If there are any other categories that you think need to be added to this initial list. I am super passionate about goddess work in general, but love goddesses in particular are an area that I really, really care about. So I would be very excited to have a conversation about this in the comments. So anything you have to add, please do. In the meantime, it's getting dark and this light is getting really harsh on my face. Like it just looks bad. And my cat is like just laying on his back, looking up at me with his like belly out, wanting to be played with. So I need to go do that. As we approach Valentine's Day, I will try to put out a few more in-depth videos on a couple of these goddesses. I mentioned Freya and Isis are on my mind. Similar in the vein to the Aphrodite video, just, you know, sort of stream of consciousness, thoughts on those goddesses. If there are any that you would like me to talk about in particular, or you'd like my thoughts on, please let me know and I will try to include that before Valentine's Day. Okay, with that, I hope you have a lovely week and I will see you in a few days. Bye.